Cush Sovereignty, Black Righteousness by L. James Bolin. Chapter 1 Part 1, The People. The year is 3190, in a small community in the northeastern part of Louisiana called Tallulah. Many call it a paradise, a beautiful place combined with the sweet smell of nature surrounding it. The people here have lived off the land since time has begun, and very few entertain the thought of any technology. This region is humid, and its agriculture is fertile. Many of the natives here are expert farmers and herbalists, growing various fruits and vegetables and organizing their lives around these small ceremonial and market villages known as hamlets. Thousands of years before, this land flourished with tribes, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, sometimes called the Five Civilized Tribes. Now, it only comprises of two, the Tunica and Natchez. Although there are only these two tribes, there are many clans within each tribe, and their families and beliefs bind them together. Their wealth defines the strength of each clan, not only wealth, but by their ability to protect their people. The strength, stamina, and experience of each warrior validates each clan. They uphold their traditions like laws, but spirituality takes dominion over these ceremonies. Whether you were Tunica or Natchez, the people were all called Wakatilians. In this region, nature is highly reverenced, and the belief in Sabaoth unites its inhabitants as one. They call one another brothers and sisters, and the people of opposite clans cousins. These two tribes are primarily peaceful people until you cross them, but I guess that's anyone. The Natchez's most praised and honored individual is a humble man named Samuel, a well-known warrior throughout the district, always willing to fight for his land, people, and family. They gave him the nickname, Hamp, named after a descendant who lived over 1300 years ago. Samuel became a legend in his youth as a man of great strength, wisdom, and power. There are fairy tale-like stories about him that mention him defeating and overpowering bears, alligators, and killing thousands of men. Those who were his enemies thought of him as pure evil. But Hamp was a peaceful, kind, and selfless man, and many felt his love for his people because he wrote about them in hundreds of poems and short stories published in nearby libraries. The people of this district also thought of him as a holy man because it seemed as if nothing could touch him. It did not matter whether you thought of him as being holy or not. He was a warrior first, always carrying 3 old-fashioned pistols and a samurai sword handed down several generations. Other than his skills in martial arts, his pistols were his weapons of choice, and he was a marksman with them all and had them on him at all times. No one knew where he kept them until it was too late. He learned the art of fighting from his father, Toucans, and this fighting style is called Poing de Dieu or Hands of God. With its towering trees, deep rivers, and shallow swamps, the community of Tallulah was a sight that some would say its beauty would engulf your soul. Waterfalls spread throughout the region are a statement that reminds you of what nature is like in its purest form. The Natchez tribe inhabited mainly this landscape, with a radius of about 5 square miles, located 15 miles west of the Mississippi River. The Tunica tribe was located just 30 miles north of Tallulah in a community called Lake Providence. It was just as beautiful as Tallulah, however, there were more rivers and swamps throughout the area. Some say that nature communicated to these two tribes, and therefore, they respected it. Occasionally, another group of people traveled throughout this region known as Anacatas. They did not appreciate the customs or ways of the Wakatilians. Only 3 classes of people were defined during this time, and the Abenians, an alien race, named them. They were the Computans, Anacatas, and the Wakatilians. However, in this part of the country called Sportsman's Paradise, one seldom saw a Computans or an Abenian, but the Anacatas and Wakatilians were always in conflict with each other. The Wakatilians believed in one god and their locks represented their knowledge of their god, and for this reason, many didn't cut their hair. Therefore, the Anacatas jokingly called them Nazarites. The Wakatilians being called many names and ridiculed by the Anacatas was a sign of disrespect. Names such as Nazarites, Mestizos, and even Wakatilians. The Wakatilians' beliefs, customs, and people meant more to them than anything worldly, so these names given to them by the Anacatas meant nothing to them because they knew that the cursing of God's people would always turn into blessings. Therefore, these names were used like the term Christians was used in the early days of Christianity. Still, centuries later, it's a badge of honor, pride, integrity, and dignity because they genuinely believed in Sabaoth, their god. The Anakitas are considered unclean by the Wakatilians, and the Anakitas thought the Wakatilians' way of life was foolishness. Our story starts with this man named Samuel. 5 foot 8 inches tall, weighing in at 175 pounds, with long black locks and brownish red skin, made it seem like he glowed. He was a handsome man with a heart of gold for his people. He was the leader of the Tablita clan in the Natchez tribe, and his wife Martha was the only child of leader of the Bragoyans clan in the Tunica tribe from the community of Lake Providence, Louisiana. His wife was a compassionate yet shy woman who loved the Almighty. The marriage of the two later made these two tribes become one. At the height of his youth, Samuel had the speed of a cat and the strength of a bull, and by the time he reached his 20s, he received a double blessing as he miraculously saved the village of Lake Providence. This was also when he met his second wife, Martha, on this particular day while protecting her from being stampeded from a herd of over 300 wild horses. As the years passed, gathering, taming, and selling those same horses is how he gained his fortune, hence, another tale that he had the gift of talking to animals. One thing is for sure, he was unlike any man in this part of the region. Samuel had a set of twins before his wife Martha named Idel and Adele, and he had 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls, with Martha. Samuel was the oldest man to live in this region since the beginning of its history, dying at a ripe old age of 112 years old. Upon the birth of his youngest daughter, Miriam, he moved to Tallulah. As the third-born child of 13 children, he did not want his children to marry family members since his siblings had populated the small community of Lake Providence. Miriam was the youngest among Samuel's children. She was 37 years younger than her eldest twin sisters, Adele and Idel. One by one, as Samuel's children grew older and married, Miriam and her sister Nut, who was only 9 months older, stayed home and helped around the house. They often visited their relatives in Lake Providence and the small towns and communities between them. Samuel was overprotective of his grandchildren and youngest daughters. Miriam later married Darwashi, and they had 2 boys, Walid and Cush, and a daughter named Abir. Darwashi was an adventurer and loved to travel, and Miriam, well, not so much. She remarried to a man named Pra and had 3 more daughters, twins Haki and Hakika, and the youngest, Dofi. Miriam's children were much more youthful than many of their cousins, but her youngest son, Cush, there was something about him that drew him to people much older than him, and they enjoyed his company. He loved traveling with his mother and Aunt Nut to visit his relatives and listening to the stories they told. Seeing his children fade away from Sabaoth disappointed Samuel, but he hid his disappointment. He saw them keeping the traditions to please him. But by Cush, being the youngest son of his youngest daughter meant something to Samuel. Samuel noticed the power of Sabaoth in Cush, that which was missing from his children shined in Cush. Anytime Miriam would chastise Cush, Samuel would scold her. Samuel noticed the servants of Sabaoth Yael, Letzi, and Sheka were paying close attention to Cush. You have heard me mention the Abenians before. Who were they? To explain that, one must go back 955 years to 2235 when men were governed by authority figures like presidents, kings, and dictators. Like times before, Sabaoth always establishes light for his people to see in darkness, and because his presence had all but diminished, he did just that. A 6-year-old girl was lying on her bed when she heard voices. We are God's avengers of justice. When we come, the time for praying is over. When we arrive, we lay waste of entire cities, states, and continents. Tell your people this time we are passing through with a warning. The next time we return, it will be too late to ask for mercy. Then she heard a voice saying, Evelyn. She ran to her grandmother, whom many called Mother Washington. Yes, Ma? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Mother Washington looked at Evelyn. What is it, child? Evelyn said, You called me Grandma? With her glasses sitting on the tip of her nose, sewing a scarf, Mother Washington turned toward Evelyn. No child gone back to bed. Confused, Evelyn returned to her bed. Laying there about to drift off to sleep, she heard the words again, and her name called again, Evelyn. Mother Washington was reading the Bible, 1 Samuel, the 3rd chapter, when Evelyn returned, Yes, Ma. Mother Washington looked up toward the ceiling. "Oh, I see, Lord." Evelyn looked at Mother Washington. "Who are you speaking to?" Mother Washington slowly got up from her recliner. "The same person who was calling you child." They went to the little girl's bedroom and Mother Washington began praying and the little girl joined in. They prayed until the little girl shone like a light and a magnificent voice said, "Akelamelech shall be your name and many shall follow you with great power. A time will come unlike any other, but we shall place a hedge upon you and yours to bring the power of Sabaoth among men." From that day forward, Akelamelech grew strong as she grew older, and she became an influential leader for the inequality and injustices among her people, and many joined her. The word of Sabaoth grew in the bellies of the people who listened to her.